In Colombia, the Institute for Study and Peace Development in the past by its acronym in Spanish denounced on Saturday a new massacre in the Atlántico department. The Russian government expressed concern about the progressive militarization of the Arctic. President of the United States, Joe Biden, arrived Sunday in Japan as part of another stop of his first tour across Asia. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin, from the Telesur studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In Colombia, the Institute for the Study and Peace Development, by its acronym in Spanish, INDEPAZ, denounced on Saturday a new massacre in the Atlántico department. According to the organization, the massacre occurred in the sector of Barranquilla known as San Jose. The victims were identified as Robinson Enrique del Alba, 37 years old, Edwin Guillermo Sandoval, 39 years old, and Juan Carlos Mojica, 24 years old, who were shot by unknown men who traveled on a motorcycle. Authorities also reported that one man resulted injured in the encounter, and he remains hospitalized in serious condition. According to the latest report issued by INDEPAZ, this would be the 42nd massacre so far this year. In that same period, 76 social leaders and 21 former combatants have also been killed. In Colombia, the presidential candidate for the historical pact, Gustavo Petro, held his campaign closing rally in the city of Barranquilla. Tens of thousands of sympathizers accompanied Petro, who addressed the audience protected by a strong security detail. During his speech, Petro lashed out against the traditional political class and denounced instances of corruption and violence within state agencies. Petro called the other presidential candidates to an emergency meeting in order to defend the Colombian democracy from those that may try to hinder the electoral process of next May 29th.
This force that
In response to this, she said, "They will not silence us. Our struggle is and always has been against all types of violence that seek to spread fear. Peace will succeed." In Mexico, lawyer and feminist activist Cecilia Monzon was murdered by hired killers in Conurbado municipality located in the city of San Pedro Cholula in the central state of Puebla. According to local sources, the incident took place on Saturday at around 10 a.m. local time. Monzon died inside her vehicle after being shot while driving on Camino Real Street to Momoxpan. According to the first versions, this was a direct attack as the lawyer was chased from the ecological highway by two men who were traveling on a motorcycle. Monzon was an advocate for the abolition of abortion, among other women's rights in Puebla. She was also an expert in public service with a strong gender perspective, a reason why she handled many cases of women victims of abuse, domestic violence, and fights over custody or child support. In Mexico, a group of migrants died and 20 sustained injuries after the truck in which they traveled toppled over. Police sources indicate the event transpired at 11:30 p.m. Saturday local time in the community of Yalchitom, municipality of Chamula, state of Chiapas. The cause of the accident is still being looked into. The number of fatal victims is also yet to be determined. For now, workers of the state's Attorney General's office continue with their efforts to gather information concerning the diseased and the injured. "500 Mapuche female knitters beat the world record by creating a kilometer-long piece of knitting. The feat was accomplished in the Araucania region located in southern Chile. The women made their cloth with their looms throughout the year in the colors of the relmu, which in the Mapuche language is the name for rainbow. The knitting was made with about a ton of sheep's wool, and as of today, it is considered the longest in the world. And for now, we're going to take a short break. Please join us again after this. Hi, and welcome back to From the South. The World Health Organization is holding its 75th annual assembly with the challenge of ending the state of emergency in which it has been working since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic and taking on new post-pandemic challenges. The WHO's annual assembly is focused on mechanisms to try to avoid a similar crisis to the one brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Other key issues on the agenda are a global strategy on food security, tuberculosis research, strengthening response to health emergencies, and agreeing on a roadmap for the 2023-2030 period, which will include a cross-sector project on epilepsy and other neurological disorders. The president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, whose country is a member of the WHO Executive Board, spoke during the assembly, calling on the peoples of the world to work together to be able to overcome possible new pandemics.
I say all this to emphasize that we are one people, interconnected, and with a shared future. No country is immune, and no country, however well-resourced, can do this alone. We must therefore foster greater cooperation and collaboration to find lasting solutions to the challenges facing our generation. This will set us on the right path towards sustainable development and attainment of the highest standards of health care to our people. Nationalism, fragmentation, discrimination, exploitation are not the ingredients for the world we want for tomorrow.
The Russian government expressed concern about the progressive militarization of the Arctic. The special envoy of the Russian Foreign Ministry and highest representative of the Eurasian nation to the Arctic Council, Nikolai Korchunov, described as very frightening the transformation of polar zones of the Northern Hemisphere into a military operation theater. Korchunov also noted an increase in military activity as well as an internationalization of this activity in high latitudes. The diplomat remarked that the neutral policy stance of Finland and Sweden had long helped to preserve peace and stability in the polar areas. Korchunov's statements come after Finland and Sweden submitted their formal application to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization on Wednesday. In the context of the campaign launched against the Russian economy, the government of Lithuania said it will stop importing electrical energy from Russia. The measure is part of a package of over 10,000 sanctions directed towards Russia by a wide group of governments, many of them member nations of the European Union. With the new decision, the government in Vilna announced the severance of its last ties with Moscow in terms of energy, since prior to that Lithuania had stopped purchasing gas and oil from the Eurasian nation. According to a communique of the Lithuanian Ministry of Energy, the country will fulfill its needs with national production and imports conveyed through Latvia, Poland, and Sweden. The president of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić, affirmed that as long as he can, his country will avoid aligning with the Western sanctions against Russia for its military operation in Ukraine. In statements issued on Saturday to the Pink television network, the president claimed our duty is to fight for our country, to follow the decisions written by the National Security Council as much as we can and as long as we can. Moreover, the head of state added that he expects to discuss gas supplies with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin next week. The statements come a week after the European Union's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell warned Serbia that it should align its foreign policy with the community bloc and apply sanctions against Russia. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed his Polish counterpart Andrzej Duda, who offered his support to the Ukrainian government in a speech at the Supreme Court. The presence of the Polish head of state is part of the campaign to position Ukraine, a campaign that began with Zelensky's multiple appearances before parliaments around the world, where he spread his anti-Russian message and called for measures such as the confiscation of the assets of Russian government officials in foreign nations. Duda labeled Kyiv's struggle as heroic and said that Ukraine represents the resistance of the free world. The visit is part of Kyiv's efforts to... We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. And welcome back. The President of the United States, Joe Biden, arrived Sunday in Japan as part of another stop of his first tour across Asia. Biden will meet Monday with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Emperor Naruhito. On Tuesday, the U.S. dignitary will attend the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue Summit alongside the leaders of Australia, India, and Japan. Biden declared on Tuesday that the object of the tour is to consolidate the alliances formed in the Indo-Pacific region. With China's rise as regional power, Washington's influence in the area took a slope during the Trump administration when the North American nation backed out of several international cooperation mechanisms. In South Korea, protesters gathered to express their rejection against United States President Joe Biden's recent visit to the country and denouncing the regional tensions stirred up by the dynamics of the alliance preserved by Washington and Seoul. Tens of activists rallied in the South Korean capital to protest over the U.S. head of state, who met with newly elected Yoon Suk-yeol during his two-day visit to the country. The leader agreed to coordinate military efforts and carry out maneuvers to counteract the threats from North Korea, as the South Korean head of state affirmed when describing the issues addressed in the meeting. Biden arrived Friday to South Korea as part of his Asian tour, which began on May 20th and will last until the 24th. Up next in the U.S. president's agenda is Japan. In Thailand, with more than 30 candidates running, millions head to polling stations for Bangkok's first elections in almost 10 years. Voters headed to the polls on Sunday to elect a new governor in a contest delayed by a military coup that still reflects a divided country with main candidates either supported by the conservative establishment or the liberal opposition. A record 31 candidates entered the race, but the battle being watched most closely is between two who registered as independents. One is former Transport Minister Chachart Siripunt, a frontrunner, and the other Asawin Kwanmuang, who served as the military-appointed governor since 2016, who stepped down in March to contest the election.
I want the new government to make Bangkok a cleaner city and make our society more organized, so that Bangkok residents' quality of life can be better.
In Syria, United Nations Special Envoy Geir Peterson welcomed a general amnesty set to free thousands of Syrians convicted on terrorism charges following a meeting with Syria's Foreign Minister Faisal Mekdad. President Bashar al-Assad decreed several amnesties during the country's devastating 11 years war, but the latest in April was the most comprehensive related to terrorism charges since the conflict began, according to rights activists. The April decree granted a general amnesty to detainees convicted of terrorism charges, except cases that led to the death of a person. Syria's Justice Ministry has said hundreds of inmates had been released, and a military official, Ahmad Tuzan, told local media this week that the amnesty could cover thousands, including those who are wanted but not detained. Afghanistan's Taliban rulers on Sunday began enforcing an order requiring all female TV news anchors in the country to cover their faces while on air. The move is part of a hardline shift drawing condemnation from rights activists. After the order was announced on Thursday, only a handful of news outlets complied. But on Sunday, most female anchors were seen with their faces covered after the Taliban's Vice and Virtue Ministry began enforcing the decree. The Information and Culture Ministry previously announced that the policy was final and non-negotiable. Earlier this month, the Taliban ordered all women in public to wear head-to-toe clothing that leaves only their eyes visible. The decree said women should leave home only when necessary and that male relatives would face punishment for women's dress code violations, starting with a summons and escalating to a court hearing and jail time. In Ethiopia, severe drought affects food security for over 5 million people. Reports from the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs informed that between 5 and 6.5 million people suffer from severe food insecurity due to arid conditions in the country. Authorities report that no rainfalls have been recorded in 18 months, which is significantly affecting the local ecosystems and crops. OCHA reports warn that in the Argududo village, almost 1.5 million heads of cattle have reportedly died as a result of the current drought in the country. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at Tell Us Our English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Tell Us Our English, I'm Dio Martin. Thank you for watching.